Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. This, I believe, is our Halloween episode for the year. I am Justin. I'll be your host tonight, and with me today are Cody and Brett.
Hey,
Hello.
And
spooky.
I think we picked a good one for Halloween this year. So
And that good one is Monaco Citrus Rush.
terrifying.
Comes in a 12-ounce can. It's very good.
But before we get to that, aside from drinking, what have you been up to lately, Cody?
That's really been it. Next. Well, I'll say one thing that I did last night, which is I went to Chicago and I watched a Lucha Libre play. So that was kind of interesting. It was based on Aztec mythology. And so they had a fake wrestling company, I guess, set up in the middle of this theater. And then they had a wrestling ring and kind of a stage entranceway. They had a spot for the bell keeper, and then they had a spot for the announcers. And they probably ran like maybe 7 or 8 matches, but it was all one continuous story. It was about like a rookie who was the third generation wrestler from the Sun God family. And then there was a third generation female wrestler from the Moon God family. And it was kind of this interesting thing where they both honored the ancestors and also were wrestling in a modern day wrestling promotion. So it was kind of bizarre, but it was fun. They had a really, really fun referee that was kind of bouncing around before the show started, like doing almost like combination of clown and mime. Like he was actually pretty funny.
Oh no.
Yeah, he was good. So that was a lot of fun. I said afterwards it was neither the best wrestling I've ever seen nor the best play I've ever seen, but it was fun regardless. I'll give it like a 6.5 out of 10 for a quick review on that. It was I don't know how you say the second word. Lucha Teotl. I don't know if it's Lucha
Teotl.
Or how that is pronounced, but
yeah, I think it would be Teotl. That's kind of like a word for God or divinity.
There
I think.
you go.
Yeah.
Okay. That would make sense then.
Yeah.
So that and just been catching up on TV shows, a little bit of reading here and there, and yeah, that's about what we've been up to here.
Nice. How about you, Brett?
Well, we have been we've been watching a few odds and ends here, the wife and I. Nothing really worth talking about, I don't think. We did watch a movie today, called The Bad Batch, which I guess was from like 2016 or something like that. It was not good. Like good, like not good enough. What's like worth talking about? Like it was
Ooh.
apparently it had like a $6 million budget, and I was gonna say I remember who else. There was it had the main character was a woman I hadn't heard before. It had Jason Momoa, Jim Carrey, Keanu Reeves, Giovanni Ribisi, and who was the other? There was another guy who was like pretty famous, but I'm like, their whole budget must went into like just casting.
It's a wacky lineup.
But
Wow.
it was like this. It was like kind of trying to be Mad Max, like this like apocalypse. Like it wasn't even a post-apocalyptic. It was just like this wasteland, like in modern day, where like these people were like cannibalizing each other, and it was like, but there was like no story. It was like like all of it was just like pointless.
So it was a Neil Breen movie.
Yeah. So it was like, I don't know. It was weird. I only watched like half of it. I just tuned out for the rest, but it was like not good. But I've been mainly what I've been doing is all my spare time has been going into Starfield. I've probably got like something like 30 hours into it right now, and I'm like nowhere close to even like halfway through the story missions. I've just been off doing everything else there is to do, building starships and being a space pirate, channeling my inner Han Solo. It's been a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. It definitely I had a glitch the other day where my follower we went back to our home base, and like she walked in the door and was like floating like 6 feet off the floor and like couldn't get into the next room because she was floating above the doorway. And then I started a conversation with somebody else, And then like she joined in the conversation and was like peeking through this window above the doorway. It was amazing. But just a typical Bethesda kind of thing in a game.
Yeah.
But
Well, she shouldn't have stole fizzy lifting drinks.
that's right, yeah. So I mean, like it's there's some crazy bugs and stuff, but I've been having a lot of fun with it. So yeah,
Nice.
that's what I've been up to.
Nice. Well, for me on the gaming side of things, I discovered that there is a Steam version of Chrono Trigger that was recently on sale for like $7. It's a game I've never actually beaten. I played several times. I've never managed to actually beat it for whatever reason. So I was like, for $7, I'll pick it up. So rather than like the shiny new thing of Starfield, I've been revisiting an old classic and really
Nice.
enjoying it so far. Other than that, most of my life this past week has been work related. I mentioned a while back in one of our other episodes that they put me in charge of a lot of the media stuff at my job, and there was a bit of a hang up there where they wanted to get that taken care of before they really gave me anything to do on that side of things. Long story short, the person who used to do this, they had made an admin of the Facebook page, and we didn't seem able to get them off of the Facebook page. We went through the process to do it, and as far as we could tell, the request to get them removed got sent to them, which obviously is a bit of an issue. So like for a while, we were trying to figure out how to rectify this without this person deciding that they wanted to get pissy and do a whole bunch of terrible things. If they wanted to do that, I'm not saying they would, but it was always a possibility. And then it was a matter of, do we have to like rebuild the Facebook page from the beginning? We didn't know, and we finally got that resolved. So they're finally handing me stuff to do with regards to that, and like stuff in the lobby and for the slideshow of all the people. But it seems like every time we take a step forward, there's like something that gets in the way. So I'm still waiting on like photos and like little biography blurbs from people at the other branch, and which is just as well because I didn't have a chance to finish it all this weekend anyway. I spent most of today picking grapes for my father-in-law. He has a crap ton of grapevines, and we ended up with like 78 pounds of the damn things. He makes wine out of them, so we're going to end up with probably a bottle or two of that as a thank you. So it was a nice day, don't get me wrong, but it didn't leave me a whole lot of time to get work stuff done.
Yeah.
So I've been busy lately is what that boils down to. But not too busy to throw in a lot of research on today's topic, which, to be honest, I don't even remember how I first heard about. I know it was probably, if I had to take a stab at it, it was probably in some sort of creepypasta YouTube thing or something, but I beat around the bush enough. Today we're talking about the Nahanni Valley, or as it's also sometimes known, the Valley of the Headless Men. This is a region in the Northwest Territories of Canada. It centers around a river, the South Nahanni, which is I think a 200-kilometer stretch, 200-mile stretch, 200 miles, full of canyons and just rugged, untamed wilderness where, despite its remoteness, a lot of weird stuff has happened. Before we get too much into it, did either of you two know about this before I pitched the idea at all? Like, had you heard of it, or is this completely out of left field?
I feel like I had heard the term before, but knew nothing about the events that had gone on there. I say it seemed a bit familiar, but once I started getting into it, I was like, wow, this is this is some nutty stuff.
So
No.
And you, Cody? Nothing?
No.
Okay. Well,
I don't think I'd ever heard of this before, actually.
Well, we'll start with some background, just setting the scene. So the Northwest Territories is it's a province in Canada that is roughly
Wait,
four
is this
times the size.
Is this the plot to the game The Quarry? Maybe I have heard of this.
I've never played it, so it might be. But so it's roughly 4 times the size of Germany, with a population of about 50,000 people. So it's very sparsely populated. Um, and it's the area that we're talking about is in a region called the Dachau region, I believe, of the Northwest Territories. The closest settlement, the closest city is about 500 kilometers away, a city called Yellowknife. And so this area is just vast, untamed wilderness. The only way to get there is, well, there's 3 ways to get there: by charter plane. You can row your way up the river, or you can hike. Those are the only ways to get there.
Like over a mountain.
Yep, pretty much. It is incredibly remote. Beautiful, beautiful place from everything,
Yeah.
all the photos I've seen, but with a dark side to it. Yeah, Exhibit A behind Brett there that you can't see at home. But yeah, waterfalls, just mountains and forests. It's just beautiful, untouched wilderness for the most part. So is the area we're talking about. It is. I'll get a little bit more into like the history later, but let's start talking about the creepy stuff, because that's what you're here for. So this has
Socialized healthcare.
horrifying if you're a Republican, maybe.
Signs with kilometers on them.
But yeah, so the native peoples who lived in the area, they of course had certain stories about bad things there, like you tend to get for any remote place that is dangerous and hard to really get people in or out of. Those are the Dene people. Generally, the main tribe of natives who lives in that area, in the surrounding area. There are mentions of other tribes over the years, but we'll get to that when we start talking about exactly what's happened here. So, this the first real accounts of bad stuff happening are around turn of the last century. So early 1900s, and some of the dates here are a little ambiguous. This first account is attributed either to 1908 or 1904. I've seen it listed both ways, but a long time ago, one way or the other. You look like you're about to say something, Cody.
No, yeah, you're right. There's definitely some discrepancies between some of the websites and videos I checked out for this, because you're right, the dates didn't seem to match up on all of them.
Yeah, and there is a book I ordered all about this place, which sadly did not get here in time for me to have a chance to read it. But it I gather is very comprehensive. That's I think it's just called Secrets of the Nahani. So if you're curious about this afterwards, you can check that out. It is available online at all the normal spots you'd get books from. Anyway, so the first major disappearance that happened there, well, not really disappearance, but shall we say murder, were a pair of prospectors named Willie and Frank McLeod. They went to the valley to go panning for gold in hopes that maybe they'd find a lode that they had that no one else had touched, that no one else had discovered, and they'd make it rich. And by some accounts, and again, this is a little ambiguous, but by some accounts, they were successful. That I've heard, on the most grandiose explanations of this, that they found more gold than they could carry. Like it just, they filled up basket after basket of it. And when they went to basically carry it back to civilization to cash it in and then come back for more, well, the South Nahanni River isn't always placid. There are some areas of it that are rapids, that are treacherous, and their boat went down in one of these areas, along with all the gold, all their supplies. They did manage to somehow salvage enough of the materials to reconstruct the boat, but the gold was lost. They weren't able to recover it. The river was too deep. And some parts of the South Nahanni River are up to a kilometer deep. So this isn't a stream. It's not a rivulet.
Oh,
It
wow.
is
Okay.
massive. So they when they returned to their site, they didn't have any luck. Like the gold had dried up, for lack of a better term. So they cut their losses, went back home. But about a year later, they got the itch. They thought, well, there's got to be more out there. We found so much the first time. We have to head back. So they return along with their friend, a man named Robert Weir, and they set up camp along what is known as the Second Canyon. And there are 4 canyons, just named the first, second, third, and fourth canyon along the stretch of the South Nahanni River. And not terribly inventive names, but it does differentiate one from the other. Some are steeper than others. Some are a bit, have a bit more gradual slope, but it's just so you know kind of where you are. This particular stretch had very sheer walls, and with caves dotting them, sometimes very high up, so not really very accessible for the most part. But they go there and no one hears from them for weeks stretch into months. And at that point, no one's too concerned. They're remote, maybe they're really invested in trying to get more gold. The months stretch into a year and then 2 years. And it's just radio silence, for lack of a better term. So search parties go and try to find them. And they find 2 of them, the 2 brothers. Their friend, Robert Weir, supposedly was never found. But this is where the region gets its unofficial name, Valley of the Headless Men, because they were found basically out in the open, missing their heads. And one of them, their body was supposedly reaching for his gun, which was just out of reach, indicating that whatever happened to them, they were trying to defend themselves and were just overcome before they had a chance to. A theory here is that maybe their quote-unquote friend, Robert, killed them and stole their gold because there was no gold found on the site, but that's speculation. And there's going to be a lot of that as we get into the stories surrounding this place.
Yeah.
Either of you have anything to say about the 2 brothers McLeod before we press on, or?
Yeah, just a couple of things here that I'd heard along my travels here investigating this. So like you said, the one brother apparently, because they're both sleeping, as you say, like out in the open, in sleeping bags. The one was like completely inside his sleeping bag yet. Sans head, obviously. The other one had, as you say, was reaching for his rifle. At least it looks weird that way. But basically was also still in his sleeping bag. And another bit here that I'd seen in 2 different places was that the clothing on them had been charred as if they had been burned in some way.
And that is an important point because, as you'll see as we go, fire is kind of a commonality among a lot of these deaths. But good point. I hadn't found anything definitive on the state of their bodies. Some sources didn't mention that at all. Some mentioned them being burned. So I wasn't sure which way to go on that one. But
yeah, and that bit, I mean, it doesn't quite add up. I don't know, because apparently their sleeping bags hadn't been burned, just their clothes that they were inside the bag. So maybe it happened before they went to sleep. I don't know, but that's just the report says as I'm reporting them.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, a couple notes on this one I had. One, I don't know, did you say that it was their brother that found them?
Some accounts say that he was the 3rd brother was the one who organized the search and rescue mission, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay. So to me, this one's interesting for 2 things in particular here, and 3. So one is this phrase that the body was reaching for the rifle. When I read that about the first instance here, I immediately was like, wait, what? Like, I don't know what that means exactly. Like, how would they begin to know what this body was doing as it was laying there? I don't know. It sounds odd to me.
Especially after 2 years.
Well, and just from like, spoiler for the end of this, we don't know what the fuck's going on with these 2. So for them to speculate like something happened to these 2, but this guy was clearly reaching for his rifle based on the position of his body when they found him 2 years later. Like, that was a little dubious to me already. But like the bigger thing to me is that all of the accounts I read basically said that when they found the bodies, like everything was there, like the material possessions were there. To me, that's a more important thing, because like if they did find a rifle, then that means whatever theoretically killed these two would have left that behind at the scene, which, you know, you would assume a lot of our explanations potentially they would have taken that. So that's kind of interesting with some of the things they had around there. Now, one of the videos I watched on this one also said that once they launched the official investigation into this, and I believe this was back before we had the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, if I recall correctly, just the provincial police at this point, they did find a body later on, which they thought was Robert Weir, or at least this video I watched said they thought they found his body later on.
Okay.
Right, but there was nothing to identify it. It was just a set of bones.
And
basically.
you know, and it was interesting too because a lot of the like websites I went on, there was no mention of that guy whatsoever. Just the two brothers. So
yeah,
that's
there's
so interesting.
Yeah, there is a lot of ambiguity surrounding these, but the common thread is that a lot of people die here. Like Martin Jorgensen, another gold prospector.
What a
who,
lead in.
Thank you, I try. Who decided to try his luck several years later. Again, it sounds like he found success, judging from letters he sent back home, basically claiming that he struck gold. He's asked some of his friends, I believe, to meet him at an area so that they could proceed from there. So his friends gear up. They go into the wilderness to where he says to meet him, and he's not there. They wait a day or two and still nothing, so they go searching for him. They find, based on what he said in his letters, they found the area where his cabin had been, because he built a cabin there intending to actually be there for a while. Cabin was burned to the ground, and either in the ashes or directly next to the cabin, they find his headless remains. Also, I do believe also charred. So
Yes.
a pattern starts to emerge, but it gets weirder from here.
They also found no gold at that site either.
Yep. Despite the fact that he claimed he struck it rich and that, you need to come help me out with this, nothing. So there's that whole, it almost kind of it has the same ring to it as what we talked about in the Curses episode. The whole, like, don't take lava rocks from Hawaii because bad stuff will happen. But a parallel, hard to say.
It's like the movie trope where you like get the letter that you assume is from your friend or relative, and then you go to meet them there, and you're like, wait, what?
But it's not all fire and headless corpses, though, which kind of makes this place even stranger. A few years later, 1921, a trapper named John O'Brien and his partner, whose name I wasn't able to find definitively, they go into the valley, searching for game. And one night, John just disappears and is gone for over a week. Eventually, his partner goes and again gets help to try and help search for him. And they find him a ways off, frozen solid, near the remains of a campfire. I believe the account said he was sitting up, holding a matchbook, and in no visible sign of distress. Like he was just sitting there, and all of a sudden, flash frozen. And it's one of the more bizarre cases I've seen attributed to this place, because A, it's the first one that doesn't seem to follow the format of heads cut off, things burned, and B, it's just so strange that, I mean, hypothermia, sure, that can lead people to do strange things, but he was holding the matchbook and he was by a campfire that had burnt out, so it's just weird. And a few years later, going down that branch of stuff that doesn't fit the pattern, as far as I can tell, only female victim of this place, a woman named Annie Lefert, who was part of a hunting party, which in and of itself is interesting in 1926. But they had camped out for the night, and she just disappears. Another man who was camped in the area, not part of their group, but off a ways, was woken up in the middle of the night by the sound of rocks falling into the river. Not like boulders or anything, but just smallish rocks just
splashing in the river.
Yeah. So he wakes up and looks for the cause, and he sees a naked figure. And the way I've heard this described is she was running up the side of the mountain on all fours. He was going to call out to her, but supposedly she turned and looked at him, and something in his face made him stop. He claimed she looked possessed, and any desire or inkling he had to help her disappeared once he saw what the look on her face. After that, as far as I can tell, she was never seen or heard from again.
It'd have to be a pretty scary face for a man on his own out in the wilderness to not try to help a naked woman.
Indeed. But also, I mean, the fact that she was, running up what I gather is a fairly steep cliff, like some sort of, ghost from a Japanese horror movie. That could have played a role too. But I gather when authorities, when he contacted them and gave a description, it seemed very close to what Annie looked like. So if it wasn't her, I have no idea who it would have been. But then that leaves the question: what would have prompted her to strip down and run off into the wilderness like an animal on all fours in the middle of the night? I'll keep going unless you guys have stuff you want to toss in.
No, I had just those notes on her, but I got it off of two different sources, so I hadn't connected that she was the lady who ran up the rock face and was possessed. But it's kind of a chilling idea of what you could see out there.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of the theories a bit later as to what's behind all of this, and this does tie into some of them. But getting back to form for what this valley is known for, in the following year, 1927, a man I've simply seen referred to as Yukon Fisher, who was a wanted man, an outlaw who was being chased by the police, and also apparently at one point a prospector himself, fled into the Nahanni Valley and was found dead in the same basic area where the McLeod brothers were, which I believe was Canyon 2. Some accounts say his camp was burned and that he was found headless. Others just say he was found dead. But if he was in fact decapitated and burnt, then something out there is someone or something out there has an MO that spans for a very good number of years here.
He also, at least the ones I saw here for my research, said that he had been known for actually paying for things in towns with gold nuggets. And to kind of go back to the McLeod brothers, basically kind of one of the tying threads here is that they may have found like the mother lode, like some mine shaft that had all of this gold in it that everyone kept being drawn to or maybe finding, and maybe that's causing some of this or whatnot. But this guy actually had gold. It sounds like that he was bringing out of the Yukon, well, not the Yukon, Northwest Territories, to the town nearby. And then, it's the idea that maybe he did find the mine and maybe he did bring something back from it, enough to actually profit from it for a while at least.
Interesting. Yeah, that part I hadn't actually stumbled across, but
then again, he had a bad reputation, so he could have just as likely stole it from somebody else too. So who knows?
Yeah. In the following years, there's a number of other disappearances, including some that there's not a lot of information about. 1928, a man named Angus Hall disappeared in the area. That's all I was able to find on him.
I had on that. Apparently, similar to what we talked about with the oh gosh, the name is completely flown out of my head now. But there's basically he just walked ahead of his party and was never seen again.
Okay,
like he was part of a group, walked ahead a little ways, and just disappeared.
Oof. Okay, sort of like back to the triangle episode we did, the
Bennington Triangle. That's
Bennington Triangle. Yes,
I was just trying to think of that too. I was like, what was the name of that episode?
I could not think of it.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, interesting. What a man I do know a little bit more about, Phil Powers, another prospector, in 1931, disappeared. Well, not quite disappeared, but died in the valley, and as should be no surprise that the cabin he built burnt down. But interestingly, with him, he was found inside the cabin leading to the thought that maybe he was dead before the fire was started. And I have heard it said that the fire started on the roof. So if he was killed, thrown in the cabin, and then just it burned down around him, that's a little different than some of the other murders we've seen here. But
On the roof, interesting.
yeah, so I mean, even in 1931, I guess they had some forensics that would point them in that direction, which is
Okay.
kind of neat. Let's see, 5 years later, Joe Mulholland and Bill Eppier, or Epler, I've seen it spelled both ways, I think it's Eppier, disappeared in the region. Again, cabins burned, but their bodies were never found. 4 years later, someone named Hamburg disappeared in the wilderness. He was, I think he was Swiss. That's all I've been able to find out about him. 5 years after that, 1945, an Ontario miner who's usually left unnamed, but I found some reference to his name being Ernest Savard. I don't know if that's true or not, but
I have that one as well.
Okay. Yeah, he was found decapitated in his sleeping bag. Conflicting reports as to whether or not the tent he had was burnt or not. But he was also decapitated, and that's kind of beyond argument. Following year,
you have another one for 45?
that's the only one I have for 45. I have one for 46.
Oh, who do you got in 46?
John Patterson.
Okay, I had a Jack Patterson and Frank
Oh.
Henderson, but that was 45 on the one site that I took that off of.
Oh, go ahead, take it, because I mean there might be some overlap.
No, it's basically what you just said. Basically, another miner that had the same fate, and this was a guy named Jack Patterson, and he had another partner. A lot of these miners seem to have partners out there, and I assume they mean of the business sense. Otherwise, you got to do what you got to do to stay warm, I guess. But yes, it's just Frank went to look for him. Basically, it's the same thing again. But other websites I was on said they didn't know the guy's name from 45 as well, which you mentioned. At least one of yours said is for the other set of names. So again, kind of interesting here.
Okay, yeah, the story I have for my Patterson is different.
Okay.
So 46, John Patterson, he was a gold miner. From what I've been able to find, he was never found. When a search party was sent out for him, and this part's kind of interesting, a group of native inhabitants to the region, probably the Dene, but uncertain on that. They approached the search party and warned them about, quote, white figures that were seen that they had seen prowling about the hills. Don't approach them. Don't let them see you. It was the warning they gave them. After the warning was delivered that night, the search party heard, like, throughout the entire night, howls and screams just from the surrounding forest.
Just the KKK.
Awful far north
Just
for them.
Saying it fits. I'm just saying.
But I mean, the fire part would fit too.
Stay away from the white figures.
But that I'm actually going to backtrack a bit, because this is the first time we've mentioned anything concrete as to, like, something out there that might be the cause of this. So I mentioned early on that there were legends of things in this region, spirits or figures that could be very, very malevolent if encountered. The first recording of non-natives that I've been able to find was from a missionary named Emile Petitot, Petitot, who wrote down some of the native people's stories about creatures in the area, specifically something called the Nakani, not the Nahani. So it's I know it's confusing, but this was supposedly a large, strong, hairy man or group of men with red eyes, covered in hair, so shades of Sasquatch there, and basically they were said to live in this area. That they were violent, they were aggressive, and they were best avoided if at all possible. Now, they weren't described as being white or pale or anything like that. They were more described as being dark, so like your typical Bigfoot, Sasquatch kind of thing. Other things in the area that might fit the gaunt, pale, creepy thing in the forest would be Wendigos, which tend to fit that description, and have also apparently been reported in the lore of the area. But let's go back to the Nakhani for a bit, because I skipped over one of the earliest incidents surrounding the Nakhani Valley. So in 1902, two prospectors, Jerry Walker and his partner Sam, no last name I was able to discover, were in the area, also looking for gold, trying to strike it rich. Apparently, they were laid siege to by large, hairy men who they could only glimpse faintly in the fog that was in the area during the whole attack. It lasted for at least a day. Stones were thrown at them. They heard the similar shrieks and howls and things like that.
They were attacked for a day?
Yeah, from what some of the accounts I've seen said they were attacked for like the span of an entire day.
Persistent attackers.
Yeah.
Can we quit this? I'm tired. No, we have to attack the whole day.
That's
we can do shifts if you want, but we are going to keep this up the whole day.
But apparently, as the story goes, at one point, one or several of the attackers were seen retreating into the woods. Like they had gotten tired of it, or the two men were able to scare them off with guns. Hard to say. But Sam apparently decided he was going to make sure that they were gone for good, so he took off after one of them. Jerry, which is the only reason we have the story, stayed behind, and he huddled by the campfire for safety, for warmth. And sometime later, he heard Sam's screams in the woods, and he waited until he was pretty sure nothing else was going to come for him, and went and searched for his friend, and found him, and I quote, stripped of flesh and missing his head. Ooh. So that is a bit more extreme than some of the other things. No fire involved, but a whole story about someone being besieged by wild men who brutally murdered and decapitated his friend.
Now I have a theory on that Jerry only got away because he was a race car driver. You're welcome for the Primus reference. Let's keep going.
So that one right there is the earliest account I can find of something definitively weird happening here. So let's jump back to
wait a second. Yeah. Here. Are you going to wrap back around to the 10,000 years earlier story?
I wasn't about to, but you can if you'd like.
Oh, Brett, you got this in your notes, I'm sure, right?
Not specifically 10,000 years.
Oh, well, 10,000 years pre-European. Is that ringing a bell now?
I mean, I have some notes about prehistoric things, but I wasn't going to immediately jump into them.
That's fine. Go ahead. We can come back to them.
Okay.
That's fine.
So, all right, since you appear to have stuff I didn't stumble across, did either of you see the documentary?
I didn't watch anything.
Okay.
Which documentary?
The one from 1958.
No.
Okay. This one, it looks very cheaply done, but it is apparently housed in the, and I quote, Provincial Archives of Alberta. So there's something to this. It was filmed by a couple, Mel and Ethel Ross, who a lot of it is just narrated by an elderly man who sounds like he may or may not be drunk. So make of that what you will. And a lot of the footage is just them like going down the river or stopping for lunch, and it's like, here's Ethel trying to catch fish. Ethel is not very good at fishing. Let's all point and laugh at Ethel, audience. That sort of thing.
Oh, poor Ethel.
But there are a few things, and I'll actually link you to this because it's worth.
I gotta see this a little bit
for one section, because I mentioned a while back the caves that they had that dot some of the canyons here, and a lot of them are very hard to get to, very remote.
Holy title screen!
Oh, you found it?
I found it on YouTube. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that is actually where I found it too.
Must be some important piece here, because somewhere along the tracking bar, there's a huge spike at one point.
That's not the spot. That's not the part.
Oh. But this is just Ethel going to the bathroom. Never mind.
Hang on a second. I thought I had liked this one, and it's not showing up in my history, which is odd. But basically, if you go, there it is. Okay. So Mel and Ethel Ross, 1958. So if you scan to about the 31-minute mark, they actually enter one of the caves. And apparently no one had flashlights in 1958, but so you can't really see much of what they see in there. They just have like a kerosene lantern, but they claim that they found in several of these caves charred spots on the ground, as in like someone had built a fire there, and
Okay.
drawings on the walls. And these are you can see them when they're going up to the caves. They mentioned that they're hard to get to, like they almost fell several times, and that so it seems pretty unlikely that other people would have just gone up there, made camp there, and drawn on the walls, unless they were native inhabitants of the region. And it's just a throwaway line, but he says something along the lines of, "This might, this kind of makes me think there might be something to the stories of hairy men that the natives have, or something like that." And this is, as far as I can tell, this is the only time we've seen inside any of these caves,
Hmm.
which strikes me as really interesting. And the background I have of on my screen here is a still from supposedly one of the cave drawings. He said they couldn't. It was very dark in the back of the cave where it was. They just had the little kerosene lantern. I enhanced it as best I could. I can't quite make out what it's supposed to be. But if anyone listening at home is curious to try and see this for themselves, the name of the video on YouTube is Headless Valley, Mel and Ethel Ross, 1958. A lot of it is just kind of a rambling travelogue, but around the 31-minute mark, there's some interesting stuff. So yeah, I had never known there was a documentary until I just stumbled across this, and it really seems like there should be more mention of the pictures in the caves that they stumbled across. So I just wanted to throw that out there because none of the other research I've seen has mentioned the drawings.
Still trying to
So
figure out why this one point in the video has such a high view count compared to the rest. I paused it. Apparently, it's a map screen,
huh.
which I didn't catch. It has south. I don't know if that's the river, and then there's part that says country unmapped.
Okay, yeah, I'm
And
looking at that section too.
looks like maybe some caves. I'm not sure what those little shaded round spots are. Maybe the caves.
Possibly.
Small
Yeah, like
lakes,
the
maybe.
squiggly part is the river, certainly. I'm not sure about the rest of it,
Hmm. You
but
watch this whole thing?
I skimmed because a lot of it was very much like I said, just, and then we stopped for camp at this lovely site, and just things that don't
Yeah.
really add up to much. But the cave section, that is something I definitely was curious about. And just the fact that this exists and is in the National Archives in Alberta is kind of fascinating to me. But
Well,
and the fact
there's
that no one has gone back since.
I mean, we could get into it a little more later, and I don't have a lot of details on it, but a lot of the places I look for information definitely seem to be like a love-hate relationship between the Canadian government and this place, it seemed like.
Okay. Yeah, we can certainly touch on that a bit later. And we don't have a whole lot to go to catch up to the present day, at least on my end. So 5 years after that documentary was filmed, a group of geologists disappeared in the area. There were three of them. Only one survivor, a man named Raymond Wallace, who seemingly only survived because he got separated from the group at one point when whatever happened to them happened to them. He reported hearing strange sounds and seeing strange figures in the woods, large humanoid creatures that stared at him. The sounds were howling and roars, like a deep rumbling tone, interspersed with shrill monkey screams, is the way he put it. And he only heard and saw glimpses of it, but as far as I can tell, his partners, his friends, were never seen again. 2 years after that, someone claimed to see a dire wolf in the area, and this is where things start to really go off the deep end, which does mesh possibly with the 10,000-year-old part you were talking about, Cody. Mentions of something called a creature called a wahila, which is supposedly a very large wolf with white fur, hunts alone. Their heads are supposedly very wide with short ears, and they have thick tails like an otter, is the way I've heard them described. So whether this was responsible for some of the disappearances is hard to say. It's a very remote area. And if any place in the world is going to have things like Sasquatch or dire wolves still around, I would think this would be one of the only places I could think of. I know I didn't give Sasquatch a very high probability rating in our episode, but this place is pretty damn remote. And yet a lot of people have gone missing here or turned up dead. As of 1969, 44 recorded disappearances were in the area, which, considering how far away this place is remarkable.
It'd be maybe an interesting number if it was possible to have like a percentage. Like what percentage of people who went there did not return?
Well, I gather
Yeah.
the area was turned into a national park in 1972. And apparently it only gets like 1,000 visitors per year, even in current day. So I mean, compared to other parks, that's probably a pretty high number, a pretty high percentage, I would say. But things get a little complicated because sections of it were designated as UNESCO heritage sites in 1978, which means in order to visit them, you need very special like permission and paperwork you have to fill out, apparently, in order to be allowed to go there because they're protected. So things kind of go quiet as far as I was able to tell until about 2005. Where I don't know if either of you caught this one, but two outdoorsmen from Fort Simpson died in the area, David Horsey and Frederick Hardesty. Their bodies were found 3.7 and 20 kilometers away from where they were camped about a month after they went missing. And I couldn't find anything definitive on the state of the bodies, whether they were intact or missing their heads. But from what I've heard, the area where they were camped, there were bullet holes all over the place. So suggesting they tried to fight something off and failed. The most recent thing I have was a lot creepier and cooler until I noticed Facebook decided it didn't want to show me all the information. So I stumbled across another documentary about this place called Secrets of Nahani, which I believe it got off the ground in 2018. They started gathering funds, trying to put together all the preparations they need for it. It was spearheaded by a man named Mark J. McPherson, a filmmaker from Calgary, who had I gather done other documentary type films about wild places. They managed to secure crowdfunding for a flight into the valley for footage and to plan out their routes. And initially, the last thing I saw on this was from April of 2020, saying that the next phase they were going to be going into was a multi-week expedition in there to try and get to the bottom of what had happened. There are actually trailers for this thing you can find on YouTube if you're curious. But initially, that was the last thing I saw. Like there were people asking on what I thought was the last post saying, did you guys disappear too? Are you still alive? And there's no response from what I was able to see. And then like 20 minutes before we we went to record this, I wanted to go and look at their Facebook page to get a some quotes from it. And I see they have the most recent post is actually from June 21st of 2022. So these guys, at least as of a year ago, are still out there.
Oh, okay. I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, and that post is just happy National Indigenous Peoples Day and a thing about that sort of thing. Prior to that, there were in October of 2020 and September of 2020, they posted links to a couple of interviews they did on like podcasts and radio shows. But otherwise, the last contact, like direct contact I can see, is someone asking any update on this project. And 2 years ago, the page says, right now, looking at filming the expedition in summer of 2022. COVID restrictions in the Northwest Territories and some bad flooding made this summer not possible, which, if any place was going to be socially distant during the pandemic, you think the Nahanni Valley would be about as far away as you can get. But I guess some countries actually took the disease seriously. So basically, on a positive note, he says, we Have a broadcast/financing partner looking to help us make next year's expedition a go. Should know more by the fall or early winter. We'll update you when we know more. And there's been nothing more. So initially I was going to end, my coverage of all the facts and figures with a spooky, recent disappearance of the last people who tried to look into this, and then the fuckers are still alive. I'm glad they're still alive. Don't get me wrong, but it ruined my bit. So at this point, I think getting into some explanations? ? I just saw the thing you posted, Cody, about the cryptid hunter who apparently went to the valley.
If you to believe anything that you can ever find on Reddit, but
right. That is long.
A one-on-one standoff, essentially. I was reading this in the background. Said he had a fire lit all night while this creature looked at him from the edge of the woods, and it wouldn't approach while he had the fire, and he just basically wouldn't leave the fire. So it was like a standoff all night.
Sort of like Jerry, or from the 1902, where he survived because he stuck close to his campfire.
Well, this guy might not be a race car driver, but you'll have to check. A couple of things here. Did you mention Jean Porel in 1964?
I don't believe so.
This is the guy who, as I understand it, this crazy guy parachuted out of a plane into the area and then took it on himself to sketch out the caves. And he was like the first one to put together a fairly comprehensive map of the caves. I think it said he had gone into 250 himself. Ooh. Or discovered 250, but didn't explore them all or something like that. Wow. But one of the more interesting discoveries he made, and this actually has some science behind it, is he found a cave that was like halfway up a cliff on one of the faces. And inside the cliff, he found the skeletal remains of 116 sheep.
Did he count the skulls?
Well, they went in. I guess this one had a follow-up because they actually went in and carbon dated the skeletons to supposedly a date of 2500 BC is when the sheep were from. But they were all speculating like why there would be 100 and some sheep on a impossible to get to cliff face in the side of a mountain, basically.
Yeah, I had heard that one. I forgot to write it down in my notes here, but yeah.
Yeah, the dire wolves were the only mention I saw of like prehistoric things, aside from I think some people mentioned dinosaurs, but I didn't even bother writing that down because that's silly. But you were going to say, sorry.
Well, just some other things here, just to wrap up before theories is a lot of this kind of goes back to the beginning almost, but a lot of the accounts had, you mentioned the wind, just like that idea of apparently this place has just some sort of wail to the wind or a howl or a shriek, or they have different terms for what it must sound like to be around this place, which, cold environs probably would make sense up there. It's just so remote. The one I was referring to earlier, though, the 10,000 years before the Europeans one, was they had said the Dene people apparently used to be raided by the other tribe called the Nahi, Nahi, and essentially they finally stood up for themselves and went to go attack back. And when they went to the Nahi civilization, their settlement, there was nobody there. They found basically, like, according to some of the reports I read, like fires were still burning, there was food still places out, and like the whole tribe was gone. And to this date, no one has ever seen this tribe again since then. There's speculation that other tribes may have descended from these people, but this was a tribe who essentially was known to live in mountain caves. That was kind of what their type of people did, I guess. So just kind of the sudden disappearance of the whole tribe all at once. And then what else do I have here on this one? Just the Dene themselves, apparently having been like more of the original peoples of the land, had all these legends of like mythical creatures and hidden tropical gardens and like all of these kind of warm pockets that supposedly would be up there in a very cold area, which we can talk about a little bit more here. But it's just kind of interesting,
Yeah, I had some more notes on the Nah. I have it written down as Naha. That could be Nahi. Like I say, there's a lot of kind of ambiguous things here, and a lot of these things we should point out as well as especially these stories in particular, are just oral tradition, stories told down through generations, and there's no physical evidence or anything concrete written down about any of this. So how much of that has changed over the years, who knows? It's probably some shred of truth to it, because that's, how many get started, but who knows? But one thing I'd said here, or had heard, was so the Naha were described as being larger than normal men, wielding strange and powerful weapons. They also wore masks and armor with frightening imagery on them, and they were known to decapitate their victims.
Oh, that I did not see.
And also, yeah, just like you said, they at one point the raiding had stopped, and so the Dene went to try and check it out and found their settlement just deserted with all their belongings seemingly still there.
Which, wow, that's interesting. So then that would be like possible explanation for the decapitations, but at the same time, they also disappeared with like all of their possessions, much like the later people who were prospecting in the area did. So that's kind of interesting too. Yeah, I had seen that the word Nahani itself is probably from these people, whether it's Nahar, Nahi, or whatever, but basically means the river of those people.
Yes, that's something I'd seen as well.
Okay. Interesting.
See what else I have on here, Justin. I have just again, a lot of the reports I saw said that the Canadian government, in a lot of different ways, has discouraged people from going to visit this place. Legally, or even just saying it's dangerous, or whatever the case is. Kind of this legend again of like the gold mine. I mean, that's kind of central to the beginning of the beheadings in modern day times. Again, it was like an El Dorado of sorts that people were searching for. And if there were reports, this was post gold rush essentially, but like Canadian gold rush, so it would make sense if there was like reports of great wealth out in them there hills, then everybody'd be headed up there to try to see what they could find. One of the more interesting and last notes I have here before that part you were talking about, Justin, coming up with theories here, is I had seen on a webpage that there was a worker at, I don't know if this is the national park up there or something in the area, and apparently this guy posted, this is a story online, but he had posted that he got the job, and kind of to be a smartass, he like asked his boss if there were Bigfoot in the area, and he said, he claims at least, that the boss like looked at him like really straight faced and was like, "We have an understanding. We stay where we stay, and we don't go outside where we stay." And like the guy said, the boss like never made reference after that to ever be like, "I'm joking" or anything. And like he said, he didn't have that type of personality. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Going back for a second, you mentioned it talks about like a tropical paradise or whatnot. There are hot springs in this area. They're not as prominent as the river or the waterfalls, but there are definitely pockets where hot water bubbles up from the ground. So there is a little bit of credence to the idea that it may not be a paradise, but it's a place you could be warm in the winter potentially.
Yeah, I'd seen some people were speculating or basically just like explaining that these springs, there's enough of them, and kind of throughout the area, that they do, like, even in the dead of winter, kind of keep some of the region to a warm enough temperature that it's not like unlivable. And in the summer, it's like some people report it as being like a tropic almost, because they have the extra heat and humidity, and like rivers that you could literally just bathe in because it's that warm, and things of that nature. Which has also led people to speculate that conditions in the area could have possibly allowed for some species to survive ice ages. I don't know how much
There's the
I put into
dinosaurs,
that, but yeah, even like going back into some of those kind of prehistoric animals sightings and things, that's part of the idea of how those could still be there, is that the winters in some parts of the region are not harsh enough to like kill them off.
Yeah, there's even potential rumors that some frontiersmen came back with actual ivory tusks and flesh still attached to the other end of them.
I'd seen that report as well. Yeah, and like some local people,
You laugh,
like were
Justin.
able were able to describe.
I never saw that part.
Like some of the oral traditions of the local people, they're able to describe mammoths like very detailed. So whether or not they were still roaming the area, in a relatively recent history, who knows?
Huh. And that's kind of the to me the most fascinating thing about this place. It's like every time you think you've dug as deep as you can get and found everything you could research, something else crops up. And sometimes it's even more outlandish than what you had seen. Sometimes it's just weird. Sometimes it seems a little more plausible. There seems to be no bottom to the stories about this place, which again I find just absolutely fascinating for some place that's so remote.
Yeah.
So on that note, did we want to start trying to talk about theories of what may have caused some of this, all of
Yeah, I
this?
think we got all the facts covered. So yeah,
Okay.
go into speculation mode.
So I mean, the least weird, the most mundane is probably they're out in the wilderness. Bad things can happen, accidents happen, people die, and the reason that some of the bodies are missing heads is because animals carried them off. What do you two think about this as like the most prosaic and seemingly plausible explanation?
I mean it is plausible. Certainly. It doesn't. I mean, if an animal is going to carry a head away, would it not carry the rest of the body as well? Would be the big problem with that theory, I would think.
Yeah, at first glance, I would say this seems like a pretty plausible, mundane answer to the question, but I also don't know that like a predator or even a scavenger animal would like target the head. Like that just seems like an odd choice over like an arm or a leg or something.
Yeah, another thing I had seen was like a lot of predatory animals, they understand where the good parts of you are. And that's not your head. It's your guts. That's where all the tasty bits are. So
Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't be going for the head straight away.
Yeah, and if they went for anything on the head, it would be, from what I was able to tell, it would be the eyes or the tongue, because they're squishy, they're soft, you don't have to claw through bone to get them away.
Right.
So the idea that they would just take the heads is
the skull
bizarre.
just seems like the worst place to target if you're looking for food.
And it's not even touching the fire aspect of this. I mean, flat out, animals don't make fire, aside from some very rare and specific instances which aren't in play here. They're not going to burn down cabins. So that to me rules out animals as being just normal regular animals as being the cause of any of this, or even something like a dire wolf. It's not going to set it might eat your head, but it's not going to set your house on fire.
Dragons.
It's interesting, the guy who had the Reddit comment, which I'm assuming is total BS, but his idea of like the creature wouldn't advance as long as he had the fire burning is interesting. If like all of these people had been burning a fire to keep something at bay, that would make it interesting.
Except, it seemed to maliciously set their belongings and them on fire. So, I mean, there's no consistency
those two things
there.
Seem at
Maybe
odds.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, this is all assuming that it's one explanation for all of it, which I am very much in doubt of. So I guess we'll go to the biggest elephant in the room, and not the mammoths, Bigfoot. Bigfoot. What do you think about Bigfoot, or the Nakani, as it is called in the native lore? Large hairy men might know how to make fire, might know how to paint on cave walls, might stockpile 161 deer, or I mean sheep.
Well, that part could make sense, I guess, maybe, but
There just isn't a lot specific other than those couple of kind of eyewitness testimonies. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of evidence that would point directly to Bigfoot or any Bigfoot-like creature specifically. Um, you know, they certainly, they would fit like figures like in the forest kind of thing, but
yeah.
have there ever been anything else of them like decapitating people? Not that I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's the part I'd have trouble with that on also, is like it just doesn't again seem like, I don't know, like I've never seen Bigfoot like steel heads to put on pikes outside their village or something. Like I don't know why they would be doing that.
Okay. I guess that leads us to the other better known cryptid that's come up in passing, Wendigos. I don't know that necessarily that they're known for stealing heads, but they would match the pale gaunt figures in the woods that the natives tried to warn that one search party about.
Yeah.
They in mythology they eat people, so they might have eaten the heads. They probably would have eaten all of them, but then again, they're also a bit more mystical than Bigfoot is portrayed as. They are kind of more of a spirit creature than like a flesh and blood thing a lot of the time too in some stories. So that alone has me kind of uncertain about this. What about you guys?
I don't know. To me, it's similar to the Bigfoot. Like it just in that I don't really understand why they would take the head. I still don't. I don't know. Is it just to show dominance? Is that why they would do it? Like,
and I don't think I've ever seen anything about them being associated with fire either. So that's another kind of giant question mark that doesn't make the puzzle piece fit.
yeah.
So okay.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it doesn't. Again, like kind of like Bigfoot doesn't seem to be enough evidence that points in that direction.
Okay. So that brings us to what could either be considered even more paranormal explanation or a less of one, and that would be either like possession by evil spirits or madness. And you could argue that those two things in some cultures are kind of one and the same. So I guess the explanation for this one would be that there's something in the mountains that drives people insane. Whether it's the shrieking wind, whether it's something in the air, whether it's something less tangible. That is one of the explanations I've seen, or I've heard rather. So what do you think about just something like this being a bad area that drives people nuts?
There definitely seems to be at least a few cases that fit that. Obviously, there's the woman Annie who just runs off in the middle of the night and gets stripped down to nothing and starts staring people down, scaring them off. And even like that John O'Brien guy who froze to death and seemed to be like, but then maybe he was mad because he just sat there and froze to death.
Yeah.
And some other things that maybe pointed that I would potentially give this one a little bit more probability, except that there's then you've got people who like just starting out with the McLeod brothers. Well, how do they die then? Because they obviously didn't like simultaneously. Well, maybe they did simultaneously beheaded each other. I don't know. 1, 2, 3, go. How you would end up with both of them lips missing their heads, that doesn't seem like madness fits that one.
Yeah, and then again, it gets us back to, okay, maybe animals carried them off, but none of us seem to think that's terribly likely either. So,
right, yeah,
just doesn't seem what you would go for. I kind of agree with Brett though. I feel like this one could have some credence to it. Like you're in a really remote place. You have the wind phenomenon that could be taking place, which we've looked at other cases on here where like natural phenomenon could slowly wear away your sanity or something, especially if you're out there for like days, weeks, months at a time.
You're hearing things, you think you're seeing things.
Yeah. Or I mean, what if the wind makes like just like a sharp whistle noise. Like, how many hours could you stand listening to that sharp whistle noise by yourself out in the middle of the woods? But
Yeah.
it does not register how the heads would be gone. But
or fire started.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
kind of agree with Brett, though. Like, this could explain a couple of them, though.
It might explain some of the fires. Like if these people were not in their right mind, they may have knocked
Yeah.
over a lantern or
That's true.
That's true.
thought something was coming at them, so they threw a torch onto the roof of their own cabin and that burnt down. It's so yeah, I do think this is one of the more plausible explanations for at least some of the deaths and disappearances that happened. But again, it doesn't fit everything, especially the missing heads. That's the damnedest part about this. Trying to think. Do either of you have any other theories you want to toss out there? Like
I do.
Oh, yes.
Okay, before we get to that, there's the one that I kind of overlooked. A lost tribe in the area. We mentioned the Naha or Nahi were known for possibly beheading their victims. What do you think about that? Just someone who, a group of humans who managed to stay off the radar and don't like people stealing their gold. And after that, I'll let you guys toss your theories out.
You talking about a tribe that has like stayed remote all of these years, or just like a band of people who are out there?
Either or. I mean, I was leaning more towards the former, but it could just be a small group that's wild men, for lack of a better term.
I do have some extended thoughts on this one.
Okay.
So I don't know if that makes you want to go first, Cody, or last.
Yeah, this would be a harder one for me, because even if they were remote, I would think it'd be harder for a whole huge group of people or a tribe of people to like stay hidden and simultaneously like patrol this area to take care of any potential trespassers who walk into their land. I guess I also don't really think it could be like just random people, though, because those random people just happen to be at the place these people were at all those time. Like, I don't know what, like, it would make sense that they were out there like defending this gold mine from 100 years ago. So a tribe, I guess, kind of makes sense then, but you would think at that point, like the modern day tribes around that area would also have some contact with them or like have more information on them. So
yeah, you think they would have eventually, ran into them in these years since that they apparently disappeared.
Yeah, what do you got, Brett, on that one?
Well, actually, I really like this theory that the Naha, while they abandoned their settlement, remained in the area, at least some of them. There is speculation that maybe they went into the caves and they now are cave dwelling tribes. I think it does fit, a lot of the MO a bit, that if it's a humanoid, for one, they like an aggressive humanoid, they could very well be protecting the area, protecting the gold specifically. That would seem to make sense. If they have known of a history of decapitating people, that obviously fits. And being human, they could start fires. So a lot of that seems to fit. If they are like still kind of remote and just dwelling in this area, they could very well be like very still like uncivilized, and like wild and aggressive. But again, like no one's had contact with them and survived at the very least. So, and that kind of doesn't seem very likely. But one thing I ran across that I thought was a really cool theory was the possibility that the Naha were in fact Vikings. Now, we don't have records of how far Vikings made it into North America. Obviously we have reports that they made it into Eastern Canada.
Yeah.
And this was over there, but what if a band of them made it all the way across Canada into the Western Territories? And why I think this is interesting is because the description of them was that they were larger than normal men with strange and powerful weapons, wearing armor and masks. All of those could definitely fit the appearance of a Viking. And
Interesting.
why
Yeah.
why they would be in this area killing people, I don't know. That doesn't seem to fit necessarily. But they would, Vikings certainly would be a bit more aggressive from what accounts that I'm aware of. And could possibly, obviously like the raiding aspect, Vikings were known very much for raiding. So whether or not that has a lot of credence to it, I'm not certain, but I like the idea.
So you're saying the Vikings would have landed way back then, but still be around and hiding today, or just like they're killing these people in the 1900s?
Maybe and that's the part that doesn't fit. Yes, they would have to have been descended thousands of years, and still be in the area, and not have any kind of large civilization. But I just like the idea of it.
They definitely would be more capable of chopping heads off and displaying them or taking them as trophies, and would be like, the white spirits in the woods. They'd be very pale compared to the rest of the people around there.
Yeah, that's possible.
That's really interesting.
It is.
Okay. It's not unheard of. When Lewis and Clark went across America, they told them they were like Gaelic speaking tribes in the middle of like the Dakotas and Montana, and like, why the hell would those people be there? But that was like a pervasive rumor, which was partially found to be true in some ways. But so you never know, but it's interesting. With the recency of the murders, that part seems a little weird, but everything else I like about it.
Yeah, same. Okay, yeah, that's pretty much the extent of my plausible theories. You two have any more you want to bring to the table?
Giants
giants
in the Nahanni Valley were known to cook their meals in the hot springs. This is a real theory I found on a webpage. I don't think that's going to be the answer, but maybe they kept their sheep on the side of the mountain in a cave.
You can cook food in hot springs. I've seen it done.
Maybe that's the case. And then the last one I have here is the Nuckluck, which is the Nuckluck is a short, half-naked, subhuman creature that was spotted multiple times around Fort Laird, Fort Simpson, and the Nahanni Butte areas. This creature is known for carrying a stone club and has a long, dark beard. So almost like a throwback to a caveman, I guess.
It's a little short, tiny caveman.
That's all I got.
Okay. I think I've exhausted all the theories that I've come across as well. You have any more, Brad? Or
well, the obvious thing that I came across here was like starting with the McLeod brothers. I couldn't find any evidence, any reference to where the authorities ever interviewed their cousin Duncan McLeod. It seems like that would be plausible since he was so well known for cutting people's heads off. And it's like they never asked him about it. I don't know. It seems so weird.
It took me a second to get that one. I feel ashamed.
Did he kill them because there could be only one?
Exactly. Can't be one McLeod. That's how it works. But in real theories, you could say that there's possibility of a curse on the gold. That seems like although I don't know that I believe in curses of that nature, it certainly would seem to fit a lot of these in that they went looking for the gold. They seem to have found the gold, and then they lost everything, including their heads and all their gold. And that probably more falls into like a theory with the tribe like protecting the gold more than the gold itself being cursed. But it certainly does seem to be something, a central thread to everything is that this gold that they tried to get was their undoing in the end.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, then there's like the guy who froze, and then the trappers who were maybe just there for animals, but maybe the gold
Mm.
curse doesn't differentiate. Yeah.
I have
So
to think
that's
with a story like this, much like a lot of ones that are, 100 years old or older,
Mhm.
some of this has to be, made up a little bit, embellished here and there. Facts are off but I don't doubt that there's enough to this that some people really did die out there, and seems to be enough proof that he or they like have been losing heads out there, at least. If not, seems kind of random
yeah.
that we have these stories. But I mean, so what I'm getting at here, I guess, is like the guy holding the match by the fire, like who knows if that's true or not.
Mhm.
Mm.
But if you have like documented deaths of these other 5 people or whatever, then that seems more likely to focus your efforts as far as what happened to them while they were out there. I was looking at one last thing I wanted to mention here too. I don't know if anybody watched it's not a documentary, but there is a YouTube channel called Missing 411 by the Lore
Mm.
Lodge. And I watched this 40-minute thing on the Valley of the Headless Men. And he mentioned in here, and I've been trying to find it in the background for the last like 15 minutes. And I finally found it here. He mentioned in the thing that I was listening to, because I had this on in the garage, I was re-listening to part of it today, and he mentioned that there was a news article that had been scrubbed by the Canadian government. They took it off of the website.
Oh.
And I was trying to figure out what it was here. And essentially he said had to do with the missing Simpson men. And it was published on June 24th, 2005. And now I do see that there is an article. All I could find is there is an article here by CBC.Canada from June 28th, 2005. So a couple days off.
Mhm.
It was updated later in that same day. But this one is titled Searchers find body of missing man, foul play ruled out. And this was essentially I think that the jux to this, I think, is that the government's version is that they found this body where they had already searched several times. They said it was because the bush was so thick they missed the body the first time through, etc. But he is referring specifically to something that had the headline. Come on here, pull it up here. Fire may be clue to fate of missing Simpson men.
Ooh.
Apparently was the name of the original article or press release by the government. I guess I'm not really clear exactly what he's referring to here, but this guy was pretty good. He actually like talked about how he went down like researching some of these leads, like to actually verify sources and things. And he said that article in particular, there is still a hyperlink that exists for it, but when you click it, it goes nowhere.
Hmm.
So the government has trounced whatever that used to go to. So that's kind of interesting too.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
He
I'm
also
not sure.
says in his description here that this is a region that the native peoples refuse to settle, and it is haunted by, quote, pale-faced demons, unquote. So that's not white men, that's your Vikings, Brett.
It is.
Pale-faced demons.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really interesting theory, though.
Yeah, it's just fascinating overall. The fact that there's so much diversity to the deaths that happened here and the disappearances that no singular explanation seems like it fits everything.
For sure.
And on that note, I don't know if we can really give this a rating, like because there's so many different things it could be, and do we just kind of want to try, or do we want to just say what we think our most plausible theory overall is and leave it at that?
Maybe just pick our favorite theory. Because like
Okay.
you say, I don't know what number how you put a number on
Yeah,
anything.
yeah. Okay. Are we ready to do that, or anything else you wanted to throw on the pile?
I'm ready.
Okay. Since I'm the host, you want me to go first, or do you want me to go last?
Your call. You're the host.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. What the heck? So I think for most of these, I mean, the headless part aside, but I think madness is the most plausible explanation for a lot of the deaths here. People are out in the middle of nowhere, miles, hundreds of kilometers away from home, from help, from anyone they could go to if something goes wrong. Sometimes on their own, sometimes with only one other person, and that can get in your head. That sort of solitude can make someone do crazy things. So I think a lot of these can be attributed to, I call it the influence of the wind, call it something in the atmosphere there, call it whatever you will, the isolation just on its own. I think that led a lot of people to snap, and I can't explain why so many of them are missing their heads. But in terms of most plausible explanations, I think the isolation and the madness that resulted from it accounts for a lot of this. But again, that's imperfect at best. What about you two?
I have to say, just from my guess on this, maybe more so than any case we've looked at as one of these like supernatural crypto true crime type things, I am kind of at a loss on this one because nothing just really explains what's going on here. Like the loss of the heads alone would tell me it has to be a human that's doing this, is just like a weird stay off my land or defensive type thing or a trophy type thing. I don't really know. Like, I don't know what would cause somebody to do this, but I also don't understand how this essentially has gone on for, well, we had 1904 was, depending on the story you hear, was the first headless people. And when was the last headless person we had?
Last headless. Again, there's some ambiguity as to who had heads, who didn't. But I think the last one that I saw that mentioned they were missing their head was
45.
45.
45. Okay.
Yeah.
So 40 years, I just can't picture like that's got to be, if it's all the same explanation, which I kind of have to think like that's a really concentrated effort by somebody out there to keep this going for a long time. So,
and they'd be pretty old by the end of it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I don't know, Brett's tribe idea maybe could play in here a little bit, but then again, like why would we not have heard more about them? I always kind of secretly hope on some of these cases we look at, like it's like the Dene people who made up this other tribe completely and just like made up these rumors and has just been killing people up in their land forever. But
what a twist.
I don't know. And then there's like the shady Canadian government angle too, which is like, how much do they really know? I saw another article, which I didn't link to you guys, but they were speculating that they have like, I don't know if you're familiar with the CN Tower in Toronto, but it's like a ridiculously tall observation tower. And somebody on this one site I was just on did some math somehow, and I don't know how you would even do this because it's speculation, but basically claimed the Canadian government has hidden like 3 CN towers tall worth of information from the people. Like they have that many secret documents from the history of Canada that they're not sharing, and like people are in an outrage in Canada about this secret information. So
that's a lot of hard drives.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, like what they could be hiding out there, but none of these really add up to anything that makes sense. So I guess I would have to say some sort of protectors of the land, whether they have like a monetary goal with this, with the gold, or whether it's like they believe they're protecting the gold for some reason, even if they're not using it as like currency. Like they think it's like a curse that their tribe is carrying out, so they are killing people who come close to this thing. But I guess that's the best I have, is it would be like some notable size amount of people that are continuing to do this, because I just don't get what else would decapitate people, kill people. But it doesn't, I mean, it could explain the fires, sort of, I guess. I don't know, but I don't know.
Before we
90% people, 10% wailing wind.
Before we
Wait,
get to Brett,
9% wailing wind, 1% rock that kills people. I'm bringing that back.
it really traveled over the years.
That's right.
Before we get to your answer, Brett, my wife went by in the background and did a hand gesture that made me realize, of all the crazy explanations we've had for this, like Wendigos and dire wolves and just evil spirits, what hasn't been put forth as a possible theory, and I don't think I've seen this on anything else we've covered in this vein: aliens. No one has said aliens are to blame for this, and that just boggles my mind. So I just wanted to get that out there. But
they do seem to pop up everywhere else. So
they do.
Yeah,
they do.
The fact that I didn't see anything either.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's
suspicious. Yeah, that is.
But could explain a lot of this.
Covering it up by scrubbing away any mention of aliens, that we focus on everything else. That's
interesting.
But yes, yeah, go on. I'm sorry to derail things there. What's your theory, Rhett?
I mean, these cases are really cool and like really interesting and really pretty varied in the circumstances and the outcomes. I mean, I had a lot of fun just like coming up with different theories. Like I started going down a hole of like, well, what things do we know of that got cut heads off? And I was like, well, this could be a Highlander. There could be a rogue guillotiner in the area traveling around with his guillotine in his back pocket. Predators. I mean, they seem to cut off heads and take trophies. They have laser beams that start fires. But yeah, I don't think you could. If there's any one thing that I think you could try and make fit all of them, which I guess is kind of the goal, is to try and pick something that fits all of them. You could maybe go down the path of just that the valley itself is just, as the Dene people claim, just the valley is haunted and evil. And there's like a portal to whatever, hell, call it, and just random things come out and wreak havoc. That, I mean, you could go with that, and that would cover everything in some fashion, because who knows what abilities would have from something that would come up from such a situation. But that's not my answer. I think that's just a possibility if you want to like cover everything. I think the honest answer, the one thing that could possibly cover everything, is that the lost tribe is still there in some capacity, maybe living in caves, and that's why they're not being able to be found so well. And yeah, I guess like I kind of mentioned, and like Cody kind of expounded on, was like they're protecting the land, like that's their duty or something. I don't know, that's the only thing that I can think of that actually like fits all these possibilities, with the violence and the fires and things going missing. So that's where I would lean, is the lost Naha tribe.
Makes me think of that movie, The Descent, that I love. Like, those are the people from the Naha tribe now.
I mean, there's a lot of caves.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a fascinating one. And I think unless that other film crew actually is not dead.
They're all
and
dead.
But unless they get to the bottom of it, I'm not sure we're ever going to.
That message from them was clearly fake about Happy Indigenous Peoples Days. That was sent by the Indigenous peoples.
No, it was the Nuckluck.
The Nuckluck.
Everything fine. How are you?
I English well.
But yeah, fascinating case. I'm glad we tackled this one, because I think there are a lot of spooky aspects to it, and
very much,
yeah. It just goes to show that the world's a big place, and it's hard to really know everything about it. So yeah, if you're going on vacation, maybe steer clear of this particular part of Canada. It's beautiful, but
It is
nothing worth,
beautiful.
nothing worth losing your head over.
Oh, there it is.
All right. On that note,
There it
we're ready
is.
to. I think we're about ready to wrap it. I have no idea. I guess we're singing our theme song as if we had no heads.
Nicely done. All right.
All right. So until next time, everyone. This has been another episode of. I don't know how we're gonna do this.
Perhaps.
I'm talking from beyond.
I was trying to do it in Morse code, but I don't know how to spell friends occasionally not disagreeing in Morse.
It's giants.
All right.
Giants.
Have a good night,
baby.
everyone. Stay spooky.
Bye. Happy Halloween.